All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers in tonight's video. This team is just, people are oblivious to this team. I really don't think people understand that Bryce Young is actually a super solid quarterback. I don't think people understand that the Panthers offensive line is also solid. They're going to have a pretty crazy draft, in my opinion, where you'll see most offensive additions, wide receiver, tight end, running back depth, et cetera, et cetera. Rico Dowdle, Bobby Brown, Patrick Jones, Trevon Moehrig, Christian Roseboom, Tershawn Wharton, re-signing J.C. Horn. I think Carolina is really just assembling a roster here. And, one big thing, for example, like a Pat Jones move, right? A Christian Roseboom. These are players that Carolina didn't have last season. And specifically, like the defensive line, the really big issue for Carolina last year was the defense. They were dead last in opponents' points per game, giving up about 32 a night. They were dead last in rushing. That was the big weakness for Carolina, was how bad their rush defense was. Like, it was really bad. The Panthers gave up 200 plus rushing yards 8 times last season, including the final 6. And in fact, Carolina became just the 4th team in NFL history to allow 3,000 rushing yards in a season. So, if you like the Tershawn Wharton move, but you think it's a little bit pricey, 3 years, $45 million. Well, Carolina was literally the 4th worst rushing defense in NFL history last season. So you notice the trend. Tershawn Wharton, you see it especially with Trevon Moehrig, Bobby Brown. They're prioritizing the trenches. And yeah, I could say the same thing, like, oh, well, you watched Philadelphia win the Super Bowl last season. They had both amazing trenches, offensively and defensively. Got to win the trenches. That's why they're prioritizing it. But that's obvious. That can go unsaid. Carolina desperately needed defensive line help, and that's exactly what they got. And I know it's not perfect, and Carolina's not going to just miraculously go 14-3 this upcoming season unless Bryce Young turns into MVP. But Carolina's going to be way better than they were last season. And like I said, they won 2 of their last 3 games. Even with that poor rush defense, Bryce Young played good. They have a good offensive line. They just need a couple of more weapons. Welcome back to the channel. We're talking obviously about the Carolina Panthers. I want to talk about a few guys specifically, but before we do, folks, hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. I post a couple of Carolina Panthers videos every single week for the entire 2025 calendar year at absolute minimum. So stay tuned for more Panthers content. But let's start it off with Trevon Moehrig. I've been covering the Raiders for about 4 seasons now, and I was upset that the Raiders decided to not bring back safety Trevon Moehrig, but he got a 3-year, $51 million contract, and Las Vegas is just going in a different direction. But once again, Carolina was such a bad rushing team last season, and some people like to harp on Trevon Moehrig because of his coverage grade. Folks, he's so good in run defense. Like last season, he was phenomenal. He had an 87.5 PFF run defensive grade. That's unbelievable. Now, he did allow 38 receptions on 54 throws his way, 434 yards given up, and 5 touchdowns. But he did have 2 interceptions and forced 3 incompletions. And that safety room, I'm thinking maybe like a 2nd round, maybe even 3rd round pick at the safety position, because they definitely need to upgrade that. I'm kind of surprised. I guess they re-signed a safety, but there's, I think, only 3 safeties in your room right now, and I definitely think they're going to use a high draft pick on a starting safety next to Trevon. But he's coming off his first 100 tackle season. He ranked in the top 6 among safeties in run stops and run grade. Trevon Moehrig's just a young kid coming off his rookie contract. He was very well coached with Patrick Graham in Carolina, and in Las Vegas. And I think his tenure with Carolina, he's only going to get better. So I'm really excited about Trevon. I absolutely love it. I give it an A+, man. I don't care if people think it's an overpay or they're worried about his coverage skills. He is a playmaker. He just is. And then we move to Bobby Brown III, coming on over on a 3-year, $21 million contract. One of my favorite things is he was coached by your defensive coordinator in LA. And this past season in run defense, he ranked 27th out of 219 defensive linemen. So very good once again in the run department. Like I said, 3-year, $21 million contract. It's super fair. It's extremely good value, in my opinion. He's 6'4", 330 pounds. The dude is an absolute unit. This is a former 4th round pick back in 2021, and he's just super solid. and he does have high potential. So they're what Carolina is doing with guys like Bobby Brown and all these players is obviously they're raising their ceiling, but most importantly, man, they're raising their floor. They didn't have a Bobby Brown last year, and it's also important to keep in mind, Derek Hall missed last season, or sorry, not Derek Hall. Isn't that that's not the basketball player? Who is Derek Hall? Anyways, Derek Brown, the defensive edge for the Carolina Panthers, that I think because of his injury last season, and then Carolina obviously 2 years ago was not a good team. I don't think people really understand how good Derek Brown is outside of Carolina Panthers fans. But like, just for example, you got Clowney, Wharton, Brown, and Brown on their defensive line, and then you got a Sean Robinson as some depth. The point is, I really like the move for Bobby, and he's already PFF grade over 60 in all 4 NFL seasons. So high ceiling, high floor. I like both of those 2 moves specifically. And then I even wanted to get a little bit fun with Rico Dowdle because I kind of had a point about Bryce Young. Now, your starting running back's Chuba Hubbard, right? But you just added Rico Dowdle because, Brooks' injury, his ACL. You now have 2 running backs who topped 1,300 yards in 2024. And Dowdle also can catch it. And the craziest thing is the Panthers are getting Dowdle on a $3 million base salary. He established himself as one of the better running backs last season. Last year, he saw career high 235 carries. He had 1,079 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4.6 yards per carry. That was the highest total for a Cowboys running back since 2018. He also can catch the football, like I said. Caught 39 of 49 targets last season for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he can run and he can catch, and you still have Chuba Hubbard. I mean, the way I view a guy like Bryce Young, as far as, okay, well, Adam Thielen's super solid, savvy veteran, right? I think he's super under-recognized in the NFL. Leggett and Coker, you just want to surround Bryce with as many weapons as humanly possible, right? Now, you don't want to surround him with mid-tier talent and just kind of hope some of these guys pop out. But you see the 2 rooks last season at the wide receiver department have good seasons, right? A lot of intrigue there. You see Adam Thielen, savvy vet, consistent, reliable, right? And now you've got 2 running backs in Hubbard and Dowdle to help support Bryce Young. You've got a really solid offensive line, and the draft is where you're going to see, whether it's in the first round. I've seen you guys mock to McMillan, Arizona, wide receiver in the first round. This is where you're going to see that clear, big wide receiver get taken in the first 3 rounds. This is where you're going to see a tight end selected. The Panthers already fixed their biggest flaw, which was the run defense last season. Now they're going to continue to add talent on the defense, but also surround Bryce Young with weapons. So I absolutely love it, man. I think Carolina's cooking with something. I love Dave Canales, and I'm really intrigued by the Carolina Panthers right now. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. But folks, give me your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers free agency thus far down below.